Hi everyone, this is Cloud Dragon FinOps podcast, episode number 1, and I'm going to talk about cost-saving paradox. It's a paradox when small resources could cost organization more than the biggest ones. I faced this issue when I tried to calculate the cost of human error related to AWS costs. So if some developer makes a mistake and the mistake is big, and we get a big cost increase. This issue gets fixed within 1 week, and the impact is not that big. The total cost is not that big. And if the issue is smaller, it will be fixed later because it's not that of a priority, and the impact is also considerable. It's not 10 times less. It's just, for example, 2 times less. But when I tried to extrapolate to really small issues like $1 per day or something like that, I realized that those issues are never getting fixed. Like if you have an underutilized instance that can be downscaled and you will save like $1 per day, it's highly unlikely that someone will even care about this in an organization that pays millions per year for AWS. And because those issues are never getting noticed or never getting fixed, the impact on the organization is much, much higher than the impact of those big noticeable cost increases. Just take a look at this chart. Those big issues, they don't happen that often. And when they happen, it gets noticed pretty fast and they are getting fixed. And the smaller issues they are noticed not that often, but still they are noticed and they are fixed by the teams. But the smallest costs, like $1 a day or less, in this big organization are not noticed at all. So nobody cares about them, and they accumulate in this big pile of junk that is growing and growing and growing, and it's never getting fixed. So the AWS bill always goes up and never goes down. So from the point of finance or management, there are a lot of cost-saving efforts going on, and they are doing great because they see there are our cost-saving issues and we're resolving most of them and everything is great, but there is a huge amount of those small costs that are accumulated underneath and they're never dealt with. And this is really counterintuitive because when you try to resolve cost-saving issues, you try to do it in an efficient manner, like using Pareto rule or something like that. You say, oh no, let's take the biggest items that we could save money on, let's invest our time in that, and we could just put 20% of the efforts and do like 80% of the cost savings. And that's great, but in reality, the amount of cost savings available is much higher than people expect. So this Pareto rule works completely differently than you expect. You just save the amount of efforts you're doing to achieve cost savings is actually really small, and you get results compared to your investments. They're pretty high. You just invest 2% of the efforts and you get like 8% cost savings, but it's just 8%, and all other issues are not resolved because you don't see them. Because you see this picture, you think you're great, but in reality, what happens is that as soon as you destroy this cliff, this iceberg just pops up, and you have a lot of cost issues, and it's a never-ending process of removing this, really high peaks in the cost increases, or really high costs that you could actually resolve, and you concentrate on that. But still, even if you concentrate, you get this big pile of junk getting accumulated. And and don't get me wrong, this is not something bad or good. It's just what happens, and this happens because we have a high expectations for the software development companies. They have to deliver software fast. It has to have a certain properties, and you also have to hire developers pretty fast to do that. So the time here is the most important component, and time is money. Basically, it's the same stuff. So when you're doing some short-term development, like you want to release some MVP and you're not sure if your company will be there after MVP is released, you may not even care about what happens afterwards. You could accumulate tech debt, this cost-saving tech debt with no problem, and sacrifice long-term strategy to short-term objectives. And the expectation is that you really concentrate on the development on a certain period of time until you finish some proof of concept or MVP, and then you expect that you could do a slower pace of development and optimize costs, optimize architecture, improve something, improve software. You know that you would have time for managing this tech debt that you have accumulated. But in reality, that's not what happens. What happens is that after you finish one MVP, you finish one sprint, there is another one going on. Like there's more features. If you are lucky that you got an investment, you get another one. So you have to work even harder than you worked before. So this process is kind of never ending for a successful growing company. And everyone is always in rush, and this some of the cost increases may be attributed, like if they're big and noticeable, but the smaller ones are kind of never optimized in this process. And when they are not optimized, there will be a time that they would get noticed. While the development going on, there will be a time when management will go and see, our costs for AWS are just crazy. They're growing and growing and growing. We expect them to stop. Like we expect this kind of picture. But when they see this kind of picture, they get worrisome because they see that these costs go kind of skyrocket. And they try to extrapolate those costs and they see, oh no, we have to do something about that. So when they try to do something about that, they have to try to bring costs down, they have to talk with the teams, they have to find kind of other developers, they have to hire consultants, change clouds, replace vendors, whatever. But the thing is that the development process, the feature development, stops at this point. And this is kind of not good. Because the development stops, you have to refactor the project, you have to deal with the tech debt, and the features are no longer developed. So the project, it's not clear how long this stage will take, and nobody likes this stage related to refactoring, optimizing, and doing all of this stuff because it's not interesting, it's not impactful, it's hard to explain for the business why we are doing that, for example. And one more reason why this trajectory is not good is because the costs on AWS are correlated with the complexity of architecture. Especially if this is some applications that doesn't have too much users, we're just developing it, it does not have a lot of load and traffic, but it's just complex. And because of this complexity, costs go up. And these are correlated. And if you use this really fast trajectory on developing features, not only you sacrifice the AWS cost, but you also sacrifice the kind of maintainability of your software. It becomes too complex and it's harder to fix any issues in that project. So how to deal with that? So the proper way is to have a constant, consistent, predictable trajectory for development and for AWS costs. It may not be what other people expect. They want you to finish MVP like here and not here, like you could miss some deadlines. But what's most important here is that you will miss deadlines anyway, but your trajectory would be predictable. When people see such kind of trajectory, they see, they see that your team is working in a certain way, and they could make some decisions related to your performance. They could say, we will invest more money into this project, or we will do something else. So when this chart is predictable, it's very easy for people to manage this. They have no problem investing more money into the project if they see that it has a consistent schedule, it's getting something delivered, and the costs are going up, but they are not going up crazy. So they see that they could afford such kind of development pace. But nobody wants to see this chart, because when people see this kind of cost increases, they start to panic, because the costs are going up, and if you do this projection, it just goes exponentially, and this is not what they expect, and they try to do something about that. They try to cancel optimize the project. They may cancel it, they may do whatever they want. But the thing is that nobody wants to see this unpredictable chart, because nobody knows where it's going. It's like a stock market. It could go up, it could go down, it could go anywhere. On the contrary, this one is predictable. It kind of goes in a certain direction, and there are times to fix those small cost issues. So you're balancing feature development and tech debt in a more balanced way, in a more agile way. Let's put it that way, because one of the principles of agile is that you have to maintain a stable pace of development that you could continue indefinitely. Like this approach of let's do something fast and then do something with the tech debt, it's not sustainable. Even for the business that really actively develops, even if it's a startup project that you have to deliver everything really fast, you have to do it right now, you still should not sacrifice your long-term stability here. You should just accept that the development will take a bit longer. You would have to think about some architecture before you actually go and do some crazy MVP and develop too complex architecture to support your software. So if we wrap everything up and some conclusion, those cost savings are a tech debt. If you have inefficiencies in your infrastructure costs, you could treat them as a tech debt and dedicate some percentage of development time on fixing those cost-saving issues alongside with the architectural issues or refactoring, etc. Those fit into the same category. And when you optimize the costs on AWS, in most cases, you're optimizing architecture. Like if you're not optimizing architecture by optimizing costs, that's a not good trade. Like unless the cost savings are really high, you probably want to avoid increasing complexity of your solution to save some small amount of money. Most of good cost savings, they go along with simplifying architecture. I know that sounds kind of weird and sounds naive, but that's what I've observed. And those small costs, they are not that small. If they are unnoticed, if they are not dealt with, if nobody cares about $1 per day issues, they're going to grow into huge dragons. And there is a cool story, children's story about that. You definitely want to Google that and watch it online. It's a story about small dragons that grows into a huge size just because he wasn't noticed and nobody thought that the dragons exist at all. So you want to check it out and you would get a lot of analogies related to cost saving. I hope that episode was interesting to you. See you next time. Bye.